75 years, Rural Sociology. Happy anniversary to you all. We are all connected by patterns, stories, so let's go. Arthur Mol to open this beautiful Sociology Day, and let's honor Hofstee once more. Hoorah, hoorah, Hofstee. We are a small university, but our name is big and well placed.
I think that's amazing. You can also wonder, how did the university survive the first 25 years without sociology being there?
One of the key elements that rural sociology is contributing is their flexibility and their capability to cope with ever-changing relations between the urban and the rural. And we have seen it all over the globe, whether you are in the Netherlands, in Belgium, or whether you go to Cuba or to Ghana, you see that that relation between the urban and the rural is changing continuously, all the time. And I think that rural sociology is one of those disciplines that is able to cope with that, because the rural sociology in itself is changing as well all the time.
Great scientific output, good visibility, social scientists praised. Into heaven, and the future will be even better. High quality. And Han Wiskerk, Prof. Rural Sociology. And
comparing different countries, comparing different farming communities, comparing different farming styles. What are some of the general patterns that we see, and what are some context-specific issues that are at stake? And so that is also the role of comparative research. We try to be critical. I think that's the role of social science, but also engaged.
I was a young boy, I was a young student, but then I had the opportunity to go to Peru, and accidentally I encountered an area with a very strong peasant movement who said, we want it differently. And they proposed an alternative. It was during the land reform, and all engineers said, no, what you want is impossible. Nonetheless, they took the land, they developed in practice their alternative, and it worked very, very well. And in one way or another, that has planted the seed of doubt in my body.
Rural sociology is my new life, because after working in development for like over 1 decade, I started doing my research with rural sociology, and that entire group is like my new family, my new life. So,
Rural Sociology is the chair group where I do my PhD, and I really like the group, the atmosphere, and I think it's really the connection between the people is really nice, and I feel really supported by the group.
I think one of the highlights for me is discovering the diverse economies approach, or the community economies approach, which really shows that there's a lot more to the economy than just what is based in the market and what is financialized, and that people are actually doing a number of different things to take care of themselves and nature and their loved ones that are well beyond capitalism. So this perspective that kind of allows you to focus on that instead of the big structures, I find that really hopeful, and that's for me a big discovery.
Globally, agrarian women and men are largely still forgotten in terms of public policy, in terms of state budgets, but also in the vast majority of scholarly research. It seems to me if we're to care about processes of poverty creation, human inequality, and the eradication of social injustice, we really need to devote more of our critical attention to agrarian societies.
The speakers don't know what the propositions are going to be, so they're going to be thinking on their feet and responding, and I'm going to ask them to be brief and to the point. I know that's difficult if you're a professor, because your job is to profess. Okay, so the first proposition is academic social scientists have not been effective activists. Jess, yes or no?
Yes and no.
Yes and no. Yes or no?
No, and.
Yes and no. Okay, having it both ways.
How we combine activism and science
politics and science. And to me, the question is not about do you do that or not, because my position is that science is always political, that it's always combined. But I think the important question to ask is how we combine that.
That's a shame that we increasingly have to follow as academia the logic of the dominant interests.
But the distinction between the rural and the urban may very well be one of the oldest and most pervasive of geographical binaries, but is also one of the most misleading, as it suggests too great a focus on space and place rather than on time and relations. Oh.
I don't like to follow the dichotomy urban versus rural. We should just leave that dichotomy.
There is, as Hank said, there's a multiplicity, interpenetrating, there's dialectics, they need each other. There's no, in that sense, no dichotomy. The real question is, why is it often suggested to be a dichotomy, and why, following this dichotomy, is so often, is the rural neglected?
The equation of rural with agriculture and now with food has been a historical mistake. Sally.
What I sometimes now see as a problem is that rural studies is seen to not include agriculture and food. And I think that's the problem.
Florian, throw it up. Farmers' agency, yes, fine, but ultimately it's all about the capitalist structures they are entangled in. Okay, you know, we've got to go big political economy before we go home, haven't we?
Well, yes. I guess the way I approach this question is that both matter. Agency and structure both matter. But I think the danger is overprivileging agency, because I think in my work, what I would characterize my work as doing is trying to progress an everyday political economy of rural livelihoods. But I think it's those political economic structures that are ultimately determining in sort of a long historical trajectory of the fortunes of different rural classes.
See, what is more interesting, and that is what we tend to overlook if we focus on capitalism, is that there are novel collective practices appearing which are changing the game. Maybe slowly, maybe step by step, but going right across this idea of individual farmers, capitalist retailers, but doing something different, connecting, also drawing different relations.
But why I was quite emphatic in terms of saying yes to the statement is that I think we've come to a point, you know, of 600 years of capitalism that where it's really endangering, you know, the planet to a degree that historically we've not seen before, right? On a really planetary scale.
Yes, two observations. I will be brief. I do not believe that the two, structure and agency, have intensified alongside each other. The world is lacking now. The civil societies seem to be impotent. I find it myself boring to be time and again to be remembered on capital and how capital this and how capital that, and come on, we have better things to do.
Well, I'm just thinking, in our sociology word bingo, we've got to revolution finally. So that's we're getting there. Jan Douw.
We are beyond old-fashioned Leninist type of revolution. Yeah, that would be the most bloody mistake you can make. Well, still some people are making this mistake, sorry, but they have the right to do so. But the way forward is in what John Holloway beautifully described in his Changing the World Without Seizing Power.
Come on, Jan Douwer, we're not living in the hippie area anymore. We're not flower powers. We need to also deal with power. We need to also not be afraid of power and use power in the right ways.
As researchers, as policymakers, as consumers, farmers, climate activists, and food citizens, we face a confluence of serious crises facing our food and agricultural systems. across very distinct geographic, cultural, and ecological contexts, the challenges of designing sustainable food systems are remarkably similar.
And just talking to people and asking them and thinking about that, not just making decisions, not thinking about, you know, how it affects people.
How do you look upon the future?
I look at the future with terror a lot because, you know, there's big things coming and, you know, it's a way. So I think rural sociology for me is a way of thinking about, you know, how can we make better futures when there's, such a big challenges.
With the ticking of the weaving machine, we need the...
Oh, what is rural sociology for me? It is a way to understand the world and possibility for changing for environmental justice and social justice.
I think rural sociology and any good social science is an art, like music, right? It comes from the heart and from the mind, and same with music.
I totally agree with that. It's fun to put your heart into something artistic, and we're all somehow connected to this rural sociology, and it's super fun to be able to express this in a different way. Yeah.
Stormy bush
overshadows the chirps.
I learned a lot from rural sociology and other sociology, and they remind me of the importance of the power of agency. So, for me, the combination between rural sociology and the political economy of agriculture and food is quite important to look at both the structure and the agency.
We're really trying to change agricultural practice. We want it to be more sustainable, nature-friendly, and I have just done some research for the English government that shows that women are driving that type of farming. And it's not that women are eco-warriors, it's that they come into farming, they marry in, so they're not obliged to farm the way the father, the grandfather, the great-grandfather farmed. They're interested in a profit. And they see that this more sustainable way of farming is actually better for the land, but better for them as a family. And the English government are now getting really interested to know how can we bring women in, and that's instrumental.
See this town full of small brown houses. You hear the ticking of the weaving machine, the apple pie coming out of the oven, with its time slowing down, and the clouds finally drifting away.
Sometimes it looks hopeless when you look at the reality of things and the power dynamics at hand. And sometimes you feel it on your own shoulder as the only person to solve these problems, and the problems are big, and they're problems that are shared by humanity, and they've been with us for a long time, and they will be with us for a long time.
Studying the concrete activities of groups and NGOs, and trying to understand how they try to change the world, and find out how they change it, and what are the possibilities for changing, that might become the main research issue of the Rural Sociology Department. Political economic studies are very important, but then you finish with just studying the actual power relations. And what we need is to study the change of the actual power relations.
Forget all what President Biden just said. Let's pitch the future. Come on, guys, get on that stage.
I see several reasons for bringing back this question, how to feed the 9 billion, into agrarian sociology. Issues like productivity and efficiency are sociological issues.
To distribute 9 billion people, indeed. Oh, well, yours about place in urbanization, capitalism, rule the world, bringing it technical.
A place agenda, a spatial perspective, can help rural sociology to move beyond the sociology of the periphery, a sociology of the not yet, and instead become a sociology of pathways suppressed, of interest ignored, a sociology of the wretched, the marginalized, the outsiders, the non-conformists, the movements, the struggles.
Academics, not as activists, but just telling it, just like me. Jessica in the spotlight with an egg from chicken, no? Well, shall we debate about it? Combine it with...
In our different ways, we are equally committed to ringing the bells to advance more just and sustainable food systems. Broadly, our vision for the future of the sociology of food is to continue to seek out the cracks in our food systems and identify what the bright spots are. For us, the main challenges ahead, as Hannah nicely mentioned, are not technical. They are social, cultural, and political.
To study in the rural places, to learn how to produce and how to eat and how to earn and how to combine all three pitches into one. Happy birthday to you all, a day you will never forget, the day we went from egg to chicken instead.